Welcome to another episode of the 1760 Sessions. I'm your host, Matt Reyes of 1760 Strategic AI, and I'm very excited to have Stephanie Crowe with us today. Stephanie is the CEO of Learn.net, a company that's revolutionizing how we think about learning and habit forming. Stephanie, thanks for joining us.
I'm super happy to be here with you, Matt. Thanks.
Before we dive in, I'd love for our listeners to get to know you a bit. You've been in the L&D space for over 25 years. What drew you to this field initially, and how has your perspective evolved over the past few years?
Sure. Well, the past few years have been so completely different than the last few decades. So
Yep.
it's hard to sum up, but I would say what really drew me to learning and development, and particularly I think this is true for a lot of folks, is I didn't go to college to say, hey, I want to do learning or I want to do training. But what I did do is discover that my ROI and my impact through leadership, through tech, whatever it happens to be, the greatest impact was through people. And
Nice.
essentially, I just got attracted to the idea of, wow, there's so much we can transform when we help people grow. And that is really what drew me into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a very similar story working for Cornerstone for 10 plus years. It's really seeing that learning doesn't end at university. It doesn't end in the formal setting. It's a continuous journey, especially in the corporate setting. I think that's how we ultimately empower employees to have meaningful careers, to move up the ladder, to get the most out of their out of their role and future roles.
It's the number one thing that a lot of new employees, particularly young employees, are looking for is the opportunity to grow and develop and learn. And if we're not providing that, then they're A, not going to be attracted, and B, not going to stay.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Learn.net. So I know you joined a few years ago, I think 2022.
Yep,
And what I noticed is the tagline, "Where learning ends and habits begin," which I
absolutely.
very much relate to that. Working at another e-learning company at Cornerstone On Demand. Can you unpack what that means and how it's different from the traditional e-learning styles and approaches?
Sure. I think traditional learning, and if I may now say that asynchronous e-learning is almost considered traditional now, which is crazy
Yeah.
if you think about how learning has progressed over the years and the decades. But essentially what we find, and everything that we've done in traditional learning, is to say we need to get people to perform. It's not just about knowing. It's about the doing. So
Yeah.
if we can get people to take action, to practice it in the classroom, to have some sort of simulation in the e-learning, and that's what a lot of my later career was about, was creating, award-winning simulations that really embedded people, made them feel like they were doing it, even though they weren't really doing it, right? so
Yeah.
so they
Yeah,
have that
exactly.
feeling, so when they get back to the real world, they can do it. Still, that after moment is actually where the learning evidence is when they go back to their environment, they go back to their real worlds, and then they have environmental factors. They have their, supervisor telling them to do something different, or there's motivations that say, why would I do that? So what we do is we focus on mostly the after. There's a lot of pre stuff that we can do as well, but essentially we're focusing on, in the moment, what habit are you building? Are you building a safety habit? Are you building an anti-money laundering habit? Are you building a managerial behaviors habit? Are you building a coaching habit? And those things are done in real time. So what we do is we send a challenge a day that is just a component of habit building. And each day you get something different, and the AI learns how you learn, learns what you're doing good at, learns what you're not so good at, need a little more attention on, and then builds up that reflex, for lack of a better phrase,
Hmm.
so that you're actually doing the thing. And we get so
Yeah.
much ROI out of this. It's been really phenomenal to see the results of these spaced repetition, less than a minute a day,
Yeah.
and then really just augmented to exactly what you need.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely, what I've noticed in the last 5 years in this space is the shift to micro learning and learning in the flow of work, being able to do it in a way that you're not cutting down from the productivity of, your day job, and then also being able to immediately put it into practice in your day job. And I think being able to really, you know, create learning environments that are bite-sized and, fit within the flow of your job has been revolutionary to the way, corporate workers have advanced their skill sets.
It's funny because there's a element to this that is brain science related, and I think in training and in development and in learning, we do think about behavior change, but what we don't think about is the existing behavior. And I try very hard not to talk about how kids learn because I think most people think, well, I learned in school, so I know how to teach, right? They think that, or I know how to learn. But children actually have this sort of open canvas. They're sponges. And so when we were young, we could just stack new habits, new behaviors, new knowledge, and then create what I call the filing cabinet in our head. But adults are a little harder because we already have our filing cabinet. We already have our patterns and our ways of thinking. So when you're trying to train somebody, they have to insert it into their file cabinet somehow, and each of ours is different. So when we think about the overlay, we have to think about the fact that the neuroscience behind habit is that you already have existing habits that you're combating in order to change someone's behavior or to give them a new process or a new technique or a new skill.
Amazing. So yeah, I mean, that's great that you brought up, the neuroscience, aspects behind this approach. For someone who might be skeptical, like you mentioned, that was learned traditionally, someone that was skeptical about this approach, whether you can really build lasting habits through, 1 minute micro learnings, what would you tell them?
I would ask them to reflect on any skill or any behavior that they learned or changed. Because yes, of course, there's a moment of deep learning of the maybe a shift in new capability or skill. But in order to make it part of who they are as a person, the evidence is in their habits. So if you learned to tie your shoes, you had to do it multiple times in order to master it. If you learned to be a leader, you had to make a few mistakes, try things, and learn from that in order to do it. But that's in repetition. So you speak to anyone who's mastered any skill, they're not going to say, I had it right out of the gate after my first training.
Yeah. And you hear about, it takes about 10,000 hours to master a new skill or learn a new language, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But and I think when you put it in that context of hitting those 10,000 hours through the consistent repetition of the 1 minute, micro learning and challenges, I think you really could see, a potential there.
Well, I'm not gonna say that I'm going to tackle the 10,000 hours here in this podcast, but that's not how long it takes us. We see behavior change within a very short period of time, couple of days, couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I think the 10,000 hours is like the mastery of
a very large thing. Absolutely.
Skill, 10,000 hours to learn how to play guitar, or
absolutely
at adequate level or something like that.
To master it, and I would say one bite at a time. Bite at a time.
Exactly. I'm curious about the AI component, especially, in the last couple of years when AI has really made, its massive leaps. How are you using artificial intelligence to make this more effective than traditional methods?
Sure. I think one of the most important things about understanding artificial intelligence for someone who's really looking at what are the options and what does it do is to recognize it's not all one thing. So we use actually 3 or 4 levels of AI in what we do, and it really depends on the application. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, right? But so, for example, the ability to learn how you learn and serve up for you things that you're struggling with, or really slow down on the things that you're already showing mastery in is heuristic AI. And so that uses algorithms, it uses mathematical calculations, and then it also takes into context the overall, we call it a habit, but it's actually a habit builder has several different competencies to it. And so in order to detect how you're doing in different competencies, it's using heuristics. We also use a more adaptive AI if someone is applying a progressive habit builder. Right. So if it's a simple thing, we're just going to use a straight habit builder. But if we want to progress people over time, for example, we have a client who has the leading experts in being able to determine whether banks and financial institutions are performing as they should. And these people are the experts. So they don't have simple habits. They're serving up hundreds of pieces of legal knowledge and policies and procedures that they keep in their heads based on their expertise. And our habit builder helps them maintain and sustain all of the changes that are going on in that legal space on any given time. So as they, over time, maybe don't see a certain issue come up, they might start to lag in a particular competency area. And so the system detects that and then responds by recommending either refresher or challenges them more additionally in that area. So that has multiple levels to it. So it's hundreds rather than just a handful. And then that adapts to what it needs to put in front of them. Because, you know, if you're only getting a challenge a day, it needs to decide which one is the most important one.
Right.
And then I'll finally go to the latest level, which is generative AI. And so we use generative AI when someone says, look, I've got content, but I don't know what you mean about this thing called habits. So how can you convert that into habits? So what we do is we take that content, we drop it into our generative AI, which then splices out the competencies, identifies the behavioral objectives and the learning objectives, and then produces challenges across targeting certain job roles to be able to, create the habit challenges.
Yeah, amazing. That's really interesting, and I love how you use all three different types of AIs. I think, you know, the common listener will probably recognize generative AI, but adaptive AI as well. You know, something that has been really big in the space, especially the ed tech space. As AI continues to evolve so rapidly, how do you guys stay ahead of the curve? Are there any AI capabilities you wish you had that you don't quite have the resources yet?
Of course, without divulging exactly how long my career has been, I was around how about we say Learn.net was around when the internet came along. And that technology changed everything. You know, there was the dot-com boom that I have lived through. I'm sure there were some Y2K things projects that I was on, right? So technology, when it takes a leap like this, moves very rapidly. So you have to constantly have your awareness out there. You need to try things. You need to experience. You know, we as a company, as a training organization, a learning organization, we have what we call our collaboration days. And we get together and we bring people from engineering and sales who are close to the customer and support who are possibly even closer to the customer, and then our training experts, our subject matter experts, bring them together and say, what's new? Let's explore what's new. Let's try some things. So we do a lot of experimentation and collaboration to keep up with what's changing. And I think everyone should be doing that, is to really continue to add to your portfolio of expertise and keep learning.
Yeah, 100%. I think continuing to push the boundaries and innovate is what got us to this point, got us from traditional e-learning to micro learning. That's exactly the space how these learning types were built. So, I know I've noticed a very impressive list of, mega and enterprise companies, Walmart, Lowe's, Fortune 50 companies. What's been the key to convincing these incredibly large organizations, which I'm sure they've had, their ways and how they instill corporate training and corporate learning? What's been the key to convincing them to shift from traditional corporate learning, corporate training to Learn.net's philosophy around habit-based learning?
So the most common entry point is where, if most of the participants will forgive me, where traditional training is failing. And a lot of that has to do with that, persistent and consistent application of behavior and techniques, or where there's high turnover. But the truth is, we're living in a very distracted world. And
100%. Yeah.
learners have a hard time sitting down and focusing. And if we are getting them to pass tests at the end of e-learning, and that's our score for success, that's not actually the score that executives have.
Yeah.
The score that executives are looking at is the outcomes and the ROI at the business level. So what we go after initially as an entry point is to say, show us your highest area of risk or your highest area of cost,
Yeah.
and we'll tell you where you have a missing habit. So we had a client, for example, in financial services that was very concerned about, its nationwide financial service offering, and very concerned about fraud. And it just kept happening. So, they wanted to cross-sell products, and they were teaching people about cross-selling products, and they were teaching people about all the reviews that they needed to do, and double checks and cross checks for fraud prevention. But they weren't doing it, right? They were still missing it. The motivations weren't there. They would train over and over and over again, still not getting there. So we said, let's try habit building. And within a week, the behavior changed, and within a month, they needed to wait for the financials to come through. The fraud went down, and just within 6 months, they ended up with over $1 million of recovered fraud.
Oh, wow.
So we find that it's about the ground level behaviors and habits that make the difference. I have another story, which I also find very meaningful, if I may, which is related to safety. Because we have a client reseller who's a leader in the safety space. When you think about going to work, you don't really think about, am I going to come home whole?
Right.
But in manufacturing, and particularly in construction, that's a reality. So we had several clients who said, we believe in a safety culture. We can't keep taking everyone off the dock.
Yeah.
Off the line in order to keep retraining them. We need the behavior to change. So we switched them to a habit builder, just a daily challenge, and it became fun for them. I mean, we're also gamified, right? So that makes it fun. People are trying to get the top of the leaderboard. They're teasing each other. I think my favorite complaint, and my team knows this, my favorite complaint is when clients call and they say, they had a problem with one of your challenges. They think it's wrong. And so they had an argument at the water cooler about which was the right answer. And I said, so I like to say, so you're talking about the training, and they're actually embedded in it, and they're invested in it, and they care. Can you tell me where the problem is there? Right?
Yeah.
You ever imagine somebody go, let's talk about that training we just took?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the safety space, we now have clients within just a few weeks going from incident reporting, very dangerous situations, OSHA violations, people, getting injuries that may change the course of their life forever, now to 0 incidents.
Wow.
0 incidents, safe workplaces for these folks to go and do their work. And this has just been, completely transformational for this industry.
It's amazing. That's amazing. And, like the situation yourself with like these manufacturing companies that are more concerned with safety, compliance related training, has there been a hurdle in terms of convincing them to switch from what they've been doing for years to this, I don't want to say call it experimental type learning, because I personally don't see it, but the different type of learning, that this 1 minute micro learning, working in the flow.
So I think the type of resistance we get is more related to, do we believe that people are going to do it? Right. And it's the same issue that we've had in e-learning, where it's like, well, if you make it mandatory. I used to have a colleague, she said, make it mandatory and consider it fun. Or consider it mandatory and make it fun, I guess she would say.
Yeah.
But once they get it, and I don't know if you've had this experience, Matt, I'm curious. I believe that, and what I've discovered in my career is that there are people who are believers.
Yes.
And honestly, it's why I wrote the book 10X Leader,
Yeah.
because the leaders who get it, that transforming people transforms your business, are 10X leaders or more. They make
Exactly. Yeah.
extraordinary returns because they make the impact in the most valuable asset they could by multiplying the power of their people. And so when we look at habit building, the people that we struggle with the most really don't actually interface with us because they say, I'm not a believer. I don't believe that our challenge is that our people could perform better, or that the habits of our people could make a difference. So we mostly work with people who are absolute believers. As soon as they see the impact that AI can make in the learning experience, the light bulb goes off and they say, oh, I get it. And once they get it, they're like, when can I have it?
Yeah.
I will say that the learning and development folks who have been doing it one way for so long struggle sometimes more, right? So it's but AI is going to replace me, but AI is going to, make me obsolete, which is not true at all. The way to actually get that impact is to embrace it and say, how can I leverage AI? Because AI hallucinates. AI makes mistakes. We need experts like yourself, like L&D professionals, like the subject matter experts to say, that's not hitting the mark. That's not right. In fact, here's what we need to do. Here's what's going to achieve that business objective because I know my business, I know my people, and I know the impact we're trying to make.
100%. I think to your point, I've seen two types of potential clients or users of Cornerstone, working there for 10 plus years. There's the individuals that just need it for the compliance, for the mandatory aspect, just to check off a box. And then there's the others that actually want to transform their learning and see the potential of the 10x, as you mentioned, the 10x leader, being able to transform. So the push learning and the pull learning. And I think that's been, something common that I've seen. And like you said, I think to your point of, there's going to be people that believe it and, want to strive for it. And then, others that are kind of just want to go with the status quo.
We'll say they need a little more motivation, a little more encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think seeing the success and seeing the ROI, the case studies, I think that's helped a lot, convincing, learning organizations at big companies that, you can't, it's the days of pushing, learning out just for compliance purposes, just to check a box or over, you need to empower employees to learn and grow, or they're going to leave for somewhere where they can do that.
Absolutely. I would say the other thing is that people are what make a business work.
Exactly.
And learning is something that happens inside those people, and encouraging, supporting, and helping them do that with whatever tools that you have is our goal as learning and development professionals, right? And if you don't use the tools at your disposal, I mean, shame on you, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I know Learn.net's been around for a while, but you recently were acquired by, is it Skooks? Is that how you pronounce it? Skooks?
Actually, that's incorrect. It was the purchase didn't go through, so that was many years ago, and we're actually an independent firm.
Independent. So, tell me a little bit more about that. What was going on with that, and why didn't the purchase go through? And are you happy that you're still independent and operating, as you are?
So, I think where we are today is phenomenal, and quite frankly, the discovery of the microlearning, the adaptive microlearning, and movement into what we now term habit builder never would have happened if we had said, let's stay in the traditional LMS space. So Learn.net actually started out as an LMS company. We were the very first LMS for Allstate Insurance, and came from the satellite learning space. So pre-internet, and when internet wasn't as strong, a lot of the larger firms wanted a secure place to actually deploy learning. And so our LMS worked for satellite as well as it worked for the internet. And that was back in the day of CBTs, and, you know, take your disk and put it in the machine, and then it'll report back to the main system. So, so not to tell old tales, but so the LMS space, as you know, has become extremely competitive and wonderfully adept at really growing, and a lot of consolidation in that space and such. So at that time, we were much more into the LMS space. And it made sense to then just combine with a potential other LMS company. Honestly, it was different tech. You know, we work with a lot of retailers in the US, and the omni-channel wars are real, and retailers will not go on AWS. And that was the issue. So we stayed on Azure, and kept on going. And as a result, we had a client come to us, and this was the birth of Habit Builder, honestly. We had a client come to us and say, we keep doing more training and not getting any different results. Can you please get us more results with less training? And that was the birth of our micro-learning, which then became, we called it Eterna for a while, and then realized what we were really doing was building habits, so we called it Habit Builder.
Amazing. So I guess that was the point of shifting from being a traditional LMS to more in the content, I guess, content realm, or
no, just differentiated into this, you know, retention, reinforcement, and micro learning space, rather than just being the back end of the, you know, the learning manager, so to speak.
So is Learn.net still an LMS, or is it more so just delivering the Habit Builder?
We absolutely have a learning management system back end, but we don't lead with it. We lead with Habit Builder, and ostensibly, most people say, oh, you know what, if we're going to be using Habit Builder, especially our training resellers, they say, why don't we just use your LMS too? So we find that the LMS piece is not differentiating necessarily for providers, but the Habit Builder is. And so as an organization, as any business should, you need to focus on the core competitive advantage that you have.
Exactly.
And really, we're the only people that are truly using these techniques to build habits and interfacing with learners' brains.
Amazing. And with that, I guess diving a bit more into Habit Builder, I'm sure there's a big component of you know, content creation with that. Or do you get content, or is that part outsourced to different, I guess, content creators?
So we work with a lot of partners, and so usually we subcontract out a lot of the development for direct content from our direct clients. We usually use our generative AI for that. We call it Habit Gen. So with our Habit Gen, you can take a policy procedure, or we even tested it one time. We had some fun. We tested it with a book. So we said, can we take a whole book, obviously with the permission of the author and the publisher, and put it in there and generate habits? And so, you know, it was a test. It was pretty fun. So that allowed us to really push the envelope and say, can you take any content and generate habits out of it? So, so we do that. Some folks have such proprietary content that they don't even wish us to put it into Habit Gen. So they say, no, we're the experts. We're the ones to do it. So what we do is we teach them what we mean by habit building, right? So there are behavioral components. There are, there are layers to it, right? So then they're building their challenges. We're always interested in working with training experts, training resellers, or corporate L&D teams to say, hey, you guys know your content best. Here's how you put it into habit form.
Amazing. So I guess looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation in the learning and development space? I guess from the lens of Learn.net and what you guys are doing.
Sure, absolutely. So I think we have nowadays a very impatient learner.
Yes.
And so we're constantly looking at ways to make it more and more seamless for the learner. And I think that's where we're going is, any training reseller or anyone who has subject matter expertise like a corporation that says, hey, this is our policies, this is our procedures, this is our behaviors we need for our culture. In order to create those transformations and cultural changes, we need them to interface almost directly with their learners' brains, right? So, so we just keep pushing into that space. We're seeing it happen, right? Where instead of taking 60 seconds to complete a challenge, people are taking 27 seconds to complete a challenge.
Oh, wow.
They're asking us for things like, can't I get more challenges? They want to gamify it more and more. They'd rather play a game and happen to learn rather than, sit down and say, okay, it's time to learn.
Yeah.
So that's one space we're going into. But I would say that given the results that we're seeing, what we're doing right now is looking at how can we stretch what we mean by a habit.
Yes.
So we're working with the National Safety Council in ending distracted driving and creating safe driving environments across the different states in the United States. We're looking at working with some potential sustainable development goals sponsored by the United Nations to see if there are places around the world where habits and behavior change can really make a transformational impact. And keep in mind, I believe that technology is not a replacement for people. It is an enabler for people.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
so what we're constantly doing is saying, what does the person need? And how can we not just support them, but motivate them, inspire them, move them? So the types of innovations that we're being asked for by clients are, well, can you do a check-in? Can you do a behavioral survey in the middle of your learning change, right? So can you imagine in learning and development, before it was, I'm going to build it, then I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to let it run for a while, and then I have no idea how it works, whether or not it works. And then I'm going to check in later. Can you imagine if while you're deploying it, you could check in, how's it going? You making progress? You developing this? What could be better, right? So that's what we're getting from our clients is basically creating an environment where we're getting a feedback mechanism, not just the data, which we have a lot of, about what progress are you seeing and what challenges are you seeing, but also actual milestones reported back from the learners.
Amazing. Amazing. And I think that, to that point, I think it's a really amazing use case for AI is being able to have that continuous conversation, with learners, where they're at, right? And not having to wait for a performance review or at the end of a period, being able to get feedback, get results, be able to make changes in real time. I think that's something that's really exciting about the space and something that AI really opens itself up to help improve. Just internally with Learn.net, how are you using AI? I guess within your staff, within your organization, how are your own employees using AI to enhance their workflows to be able to accomplish their work quicker and more effectively and smarter?
Sure, it's a great question, and I'm glad you said enhance their workload. We don't we don't replace, we enhance here because we really believe in the human component. That's why we're in the learning space. So I would say there's a couple areas where we're leveraging it. Certainly, we double check our code. We leverage some code support. I will tell you, it's not always right because. Since we're the only ones doing habit building, it's not like you can ask AI, what do you think about this, and compare it to other people doing it. But that's okay. It's all, we use it for idea generation for that as well. We're using it for marketing, right? To be able to develop some campaigns and think about that. And then I mentioned the Habit Gen was born out of our instructional design team saying, hey, what can we do from a generation standpoint? So our engineering team had already built an interface for generative AI to be able to convert policies and procedures and put them directly into our software with an approval process and such for subject matter experts. And our instructional design team said, can we make that even better? And so we started creating more agents around, understanding learner roles, understanding even before that the strategy behind any given business, the critical roles, the critical risks that would point to the habits. So those are things that we're doing on the front end. And then, we also use a little bit of AI to just reach out and build out our social media reach and such, because that's awfully hard to keep up with these days.
Yes. Yes.
And try to stay real in that process as much as we can.
Yes, exactly. I think what I got from that was, really using it just to be more efficient and effective and, automate a lot of, you know, tasks prior that were time consuming, just so you have more time to truly innovate and use the human power that we've talked about so much in terms of getting that 10x.
And more time to talk to people, right? I mean,
Yes,
to be able to connect,
exactly.
that's where, having connections with folks is phenomenal. And that's what we want to make sure we have time to do.
Yes. Um, I know you've been in this space for a while and seen massive changes, just from how e-learning has evolved. If you could wave a magic wand and solve one big challenge in Learn.net today, what would that be? What's the biggest challenge holding you guys back from, accomplishing your roadmap, your goals?
If I could wave my magic wand, I would bring together all the training partners I could find and do a massive collaboration session and have them say, here's what I want to be able to instantaneously press a button, create a habit builder, and then send it out to my customers.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds like that would do a lot of good for for corporate learning. So before we wrap up, I'd love to get your perspective on leadership. You stepped into the CEO role at Learn.net during, a time of significant change and growth. What's been the most challenging aspect of leading a technology company in today's, AI landscape?
I think it's almost exactly the same as any corporation. I've been in tech most of my career, so where that ability to keep up and stay ahead while you have legacy environments and legacy technology, to say it's okay to quickly try to revamp and let go, right?
Yeah.
So the holding on to how we've always done things, and we're a learning tech company, right? So we're actually
Yeah.
quite innovative all the time. We're always making new things, which we fall in love with, and we want to take them to market. And yet, it's difficult when clients are saying, hey, I'd really just like to keep doing things this way. So, I think it's always a struggle. I credit some background that I have in change management and change leadership and saying, hey, what got us here is absolutely wonderful, right?
Right.
And that letting go of, I think we actually had two LMSs at one point because they served two completely different markets, and we had to let go, right? It doesn't make sense to support all of that. So being able to focus and stay going forward, and let go of those things that, even though they feel good, that you have to let go to be able to move forward.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Um, Stephanie, this has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
For our listeners that want to learn more about Learn.net or connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
Absolutely. So obviously go ahead and hit learn.net. Any inquiry that comes in there, let us know what you're interested in. It'll find the right place. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to support any conversation, any insights people would like to have, and connect there.
Is there anything else that you'd like to plug or share with, just about yourself, about learn.net, forthcoming roadmap, anything?
Sure. Well, I would say if you have a habit that you'd like to master in your audience, or if you're a training provider, we have a specific reseller program where training providers can take their one and done trainings and actually convert them within 6 weeks to a launch of a habit builder to make a much bigger impact with their clients. Or if you, as a corporate learning and development person, have a program that you really want to get 10x ROI out of, I would say the best way to do that is to add a habit builder. We do have some speaking engagements coming up, so follow us on LinkedIn, and we would love to invite you and to engage in the conversation about habit building, because we're on a mission to make the world better, one habit at a time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Love what you're doing with habit-based learning. This intersection of neuroscience, AI, and practical business outcomes is exactly, what we need in the world of corporate learning. So thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Absolutely, and thanks for the conversation. I think we need to keep it going.
Definitely. Thank you all for tuning in and listening to the 1760 sessions. I'm Matt Reyes from 1760 Strategic AI. And this is Stephanie Crowe from Learn.net speaking about the power of habit building. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll chat soon.